The bridge of the UES Thunderchild fell silent as Captain Alina Reyes played the fragmented distress message. The holographic display flickered, showing terrified faces of colonists from Helios mining outpost. They came without warning, a dust-covered man reported, his voice breaking as explosions illuminated the background. Massive ships, at least 30 of them. Our defense grid might as well be paper for all the good it's doing. The transmission cut to a woman in a colonial security uniform, blood trickling from her temple. We've never seen weapons like these. They're systematically taking out our infrastructure. Please. Her plea ended in static. Reyes replayed the final seconds, studying the brief glimpse of an alien vessel. Sleek and predatory, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Analysis, she asked her science officer. Lieutenant Commander Patel shook his head. Unknown configuration, Captain. Nothing in our databases. Contact the Galactic Council, Reyes ordered, her expression grim. Someone out there knows who's attacking our people. Minutes later, the reptilian face of Ambassador Catal appeared on screen, scales shifting from green to a nervous blue-gray when Reyes shared the footage. The Vorax, he said, multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. We regret to inform you that your mining colony is likely already lost. You know these attackers, Reyes demanded. Catal's head bobbed in the affirmative gesture his species used. A highly advanced civilization. They consider expansion their evolutionary right. The Council has a non-interference policy regarding their territorial acquisitions. Reyes' eyes narrowed. That's my people they're slaughtering, Ambassador. Captain. Catal leaned closer to the screen, voice dropping to a whisper. The Vorax technological advantage is insurmountable. Their weapon systems exceed yours by centuries of development. No species has ever successfully defended against their initial conquest wave. What does the Council recommend? Immediate surrender of the colony. The Vorax sometimes permit evacuation of survivors who don't resist. The bridge crew exchanged looks of disbelief and anger. Lieutenant Santos, at tactical, clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened. Humanity doesn't abandon its people, Ambassador, Reyes stated flatly. Your sentiment is admirable, but misguided. The Vorax have conquered species far more advanced than humans. Your ships would be annihilated before firing a single shot. Reyes terminated the transmission with a sharp gesture. Ensign Chen, set course for Helios, maximum speed. Lieutenant Santos, send encrypted communications to Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of all available Vanguard-class vessels to rendezvous at these coordinates. Captain, Commander Oliveira, her XO, approached quietly. The Vanguard ships are still experimental. If the Council is right about these Vorax, we need ships that can dance, not just punch. Reyes cut him off. The Vanguards are the most maneuverable vessels in our fleet. As the Thunderchild prepared to jump to FTL, a communication officer caught Reyes' attention. Captain, I intercepted a transmission from the Council vessel. They're reporting that humans are engaging the Vorax. And they're describing it as regrettable. They said we showed promising potential before meeting the Vorax. Reyes' lips formed a thin line. They're writing our obituary before the fights even started. She addressed the entire bridge. Well, I think it's time humanity introduced itself properly to the galaxy. Let's show them what happens when you corner a species that evolved as prey before becoming predators. The Thunderchild leaked into FTL, leaving behind a Council observation vessel whose occupants were already preparing to document humanity's inevitable defeat. Multiple contacts, Lieutenant Santos reported as the 5 human warships dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Helios system. I count 37 Vorax vessels in standard siege formation. They're massive. Captain Reyes stared at the tactical display, her face illuminated by the holographic projection of the mining colony. Systematic bombardment had reduced the main settlement to rubble, but several hardened bunkers still registered life signs. Immediate stealth protocols. All ships maintain emission control, she ordered. The human vessels dimmed instantly, their heat signatures masked by experimental technology that the Vorax, with their overwhelming firepower, had never needed to develop. Commander Oliveira leaned over the tactical station. "They're so methodical. Look at those formations. Perfect geometric patterns, evenly spaced. Almost beautiful, in a terrifying way." Reyes observed the enemy movements for 20 silent minutes, noting their predictable patrol patterns and rigid adherence to textbook siege tactics. Eventually, a slow smile spread across her face. "They're fighting the last war, not this one," she said. "Patch me through to the task force." The faces of 4 other captains appeared on screen, their expressions tense but determined. Captain Rodriguez of the Harrier, Commander Wu of the Peregrine, Captain Cosi of the Osprey, and Commander Singh of the Kestrel, all commanding the most agile vessels in Earth's arsenal. "Standard defensive formations will get us slaughtered," Reyes began without preamble. "The Vorax expect us to form a line and fight conventionally. Instead, we'll use Protocol Epsilon." Commander Wu frowned. "The Chaos Gambit. That's a training exercise, not battlefield doctrine." "Exactly why it'll work. They've never fought humans before." Reyes outlined her plan. The Thunderchild would appear to malfunction, drifting toward the Vorax flagship while emitting false radiation signatures suggesting a core breach. Meanwhile, the other ships would execute synchronized hit-and-run attacks from multiple vectors, never engaging for more than 15 seconds before changing positions. "They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered," Reyes concluded. "Let's show them how humans fight when outgunned." 2 hours later, the plan went into motion. The Thunderchild's apparent malfunction drew immediate attention from 3 Vorax cruisers that moved to intercept. Exactly as Reyes had predicted. "They're sending boarding parties to capture our technology," Santos reported with a grim smile. "Right into our trap." The moment the Vorax vessels committed to their course, the other human ships struck. The Harrier and Osprey targeted the alien fleet's communication relays, while the Peregrine and Kestrel deployed experimental EMP warheads against the Vorax engines. On the Vorax command ship, confusion reigned. Their intelligence had classified humans as a minor species with predictable military doctrine. Instead, they faced ships that refused to form proper battle lines, attacking from impossible angles before vanishing again. "The primates are not adhering to established combat protocols," a Vorax commander shrieked to his superior. "Their attack patterns show no logical progression." By the time the Vorax reorganized, 3 of their support ships lay disabled, venting atmosphere into space. More importantly, a corridor to the colony's main bunker complex stood temporarily open. "Nightingale, you have your window," Reyes transmitted to the medical frigate hiding behind Helios' second moon. "Begin evacuation." As the rescue ship raced toward the surface, Lieutenant Santos monitored Vorax communications. "Captain, they're completely baffled," he reported with undisguised satisfaction. "Their commanders are demanding to know what combat doctrine we're using." Reyes allowed herself a moment of grim pride. "Tell them it's called Humanity." Captain Reyes stepped into the makeshift command center aboard the medical frigate Nightingale, where hundreds of evacuated colonists huddled in converted cargo bays. The ship's doctors moved efficiently among the wounded, but supplies were already running low. "Captain," a disheveled man in a dust-covered lab coat waved her over. "Dr. Sanjay Patel, colony chief engineer. I need to show you something." He led her to a workbench where several colonists hunched over a strange device cobbled together from mining equipment and twisted fragments of metal with an alien sheen. "Vorax weapon debris," Patel explained, noticing her curious gaze. "When they started bombarding us, we collected fragments for analysis." "You were studying their weapons while under attack?" Reyes asked, incredulous. Patel shrugged. "What else could we do? Hide and die." He powered up the crude device, which emitted a pulsing field that made the air shimmer. "Their energy weapons operate on a modulating frequency, advanced, but not unbeatable. This creates an interference pattern." "And this does what exactly?" "It won't stop their weapons," a young woman interjected, stepping forward. "But our simulations show it could weaken their effectiveness by approximately 30%. I'm Maya, Dr. Patel's daughter." Rai studied the device with newfound respect. "You developed countermeasures while under bombardment with minimal equipment." "Necessity breeds innovation," Captain Patel said simply. Across the system, aboard the Vorax flagship Inevitable Dominance, Supreme Commander Dryzak summoned his senior staff, mandating they explain humanity's unexpected resistance. "These primitives should have been subjugated within hours," Dryzak growled, his violet eyes narrowed to slits. "Instead, they disabled 3 vessels and evacuated half the colony. Explain this failure." His science officer nervously stepped forward, displaying holographic battle analyses. "The humans appear to modify their tactics after each engagement, High Commander. They learn and adapt with unprecedented speed." "Impossible," Dryzak dismissed. "Their technology is centuries behind ours." "It's not their technology that concerns us," the intelligence officer interjected. "Their command structure permits lower-ranking individuals to make significant battlefield decisions without authorization. Captured communications indicate their ship captains act independently, coordinating without central direction." Dryzak's inner eyelids closed in contemplation. No effective military can function without proper hierarchical control. This is chaos, not strategy. "Yet they are effectively countering our standard procedures," the weapons officer observed cautiously. "And now they appear to be developing countermeasures to our energy weapons." Back on the Nightingale, Rai is authorized emergency resource allocation to replicate Dr. Patel's device for the human fleet. Engineering teams worked through the night in a race against time as the Vorax regrouped. When Patel collapsed from exhaustion after 20 hours of continuous work, his daughter Maya immediately took his place, leading a team of civilians and military engineers. "You know how to calibrate the phasing unit?" Rais asked, surprised. Maya adjusted the complex equations scrolling across her tablet. "Dad taught me the principles before the attack. He always said technology should never be a mystery to the next generation." As the evacuation continued, Rais received a transmission from Lieutenant Santos aboard the Thunderchild. "Captain, Vorax reinforcements just arrived. And you need to see this." The tactical feed showed a massive tear in space as something emerged, something that dwarfed even the largest Vorax ships already in the system. The vessel's hull was etched with glowing symbols, its silhouette like a predatory creature from Earth's primordial oceans. Captain Rais felt her blood run cold. "Get those shield modifications finished," she ordered Maya. "We've just run out of time." "Vorax Dreadnought-class vessel," Lieutenant Santos reported, his voice unnaturally calm. "Based on its size and energy signature, it outguns our entire fleet by a factor of 10. The temporary human victory shattered as the massive vessel completed its emergence into normal space. Nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull rippled with violet energy conduits and weapon ports large enough to swallow a shuttle. The Council observation vessel, which had maintained a safe distance throughout the battle, immediately transmitted, "Captain Rais, that is the world breaker. It has ended entire civilizations. You must surrender now." On the Thunderchild's bridge, tactical officers stared in stunned silence as the massive ship powered up weapon systems capable of cracking a planet's crust. Sensor readings went off the scale. "The Vorax are broadcasting on all frequencies, Captain," Communications Officer Park reported. "They're laughing at us." A harsh, clicking voice filled the command deck. "Primitive humans, your resistance has provided brief amusement, but playtime is over. Surrender your colony or watch as we reduce it to molten slag." Commander Oliveira leaned close to Reyes. "Captain, we have to consider evacuating as many colonists as possible. Those weapons could vaporize the planet's surface." Rather than despair, Reyes straightened her uniform and addressed her communications officer. "Lieutenant Park, open a coded channel to Earth's orbital defense platform Olympus." The crew exchanged glances as Reyes input her authorization code. "Sierra 9 Delta. Deploy the Prometheus." Captain, Oliveira questioned. What's the Prometheus? Humanity's insurance policy, Rise replied cryptically. Something Earth Command developed after our first contact with alien life, just in case we encountered someone who wasn't friendly. The Vorax intercepted the transmission, and Supreme Commander Drazak's mocking voice flooded the channel again. Your primitive technology cannot save you now. No rescue will arrive in time. What they didn't know. While the Galactic Council dismissed humanity as newcomers, Earth's governments have been preparing for existential threats since detecting the first alien signals decades earlier. Deep within Earth's orbit, magnetic clamps released from mankind's greatest secret, the UES Prometheus, a vessel whose very existence violated multiple Galactic Council technology treaties. Its design incorporated reverse-engineered components from a dozen alien civilizations, studied in secret and enhanced with humanity's unique approach to warfare. Status report: Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto commanded from the Prometheus bridge, watching as his crew executed the emergency deployment sequence. FTL drive charged and ready. Admiral, his executive officer responded. Experimental weapons systems online. Grid defense network at optimal capacity. Yamamoto studied the tactical display showing the desperate situation at Helios. Navigator, plot direct jump to these coordinates. Weapons Officer Chen, prepare all systems for immediate engagement upon arrival. As the Prometheus prepared to jump, Yamamoto addressed his crew. Men and women of Earth, today we answer a question the galaxy has been asking. Can humanity survive among the stars? For too long, species like the Vorax have preyed upon those they consider weaker. They expect us to follow the same patterns as those who came before, to form defensive lines, to rely on conventional tactics, to die bravely but futilely. His eyes hardened. We will not oblige them. Earth Command has authorized full deployment of all classified systems. The Prometheus was built for this day. The massive engines hummed as the experimental FTL drive engaged, not with a bright flash typical of alien drives, but silently, like a hunter entering the darkness. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. Back at Helios, Captain Rise watched the tactical display and whispered to herself, Come on, Prometheus. Show them what humanity can do when pushed too far. The Vorax command staff erupted in derisive laughter as sensors detected a single human vessel answering Rhea's call for reinforcements. They send one ship against the Worldbreaker. Supreme Commander Drazak's second-in-command scoffed. Perhaps they wish to surrender in person. Their laughter died as the UES Prometheus emerged from FTL, not with a bright flash typical of alien drives, but silently, like a predator closing in on unsuspecting prey. Though smaller than the Dreadnought at just under 1 kilometer in length, it bore scorch marks and battle damage from previous classified engagements. Interesting design, the Vorax science officer noted with reluctant admiration. Unconventional configuration, multiple technology signatures. Admiral Yamamoto opened communications. Captain Rise, Prometheus has arrived. I apologize for our delay. We were running final checks on our new systems. Glad you could join us, Admiral. Rise responded, relief evident in her voice. The situation is critical. They have a planet killer. So I see. Time to level the playing field. At Yamamoto's command, the Prometheus hull split open along previously invisible seams, revealing launch bays that disgorged thousands of small, agile craft that moved with impossible coordination. What are those? Commander Oliveira asked, watching the tactical display aboard the Thunderchild. Swarm units, Rise explained. Semi-autonomous warfare and reconnaissance modules. Each drone contains an advanced tactical computer linked to a human operator who provides strategic oversight. The Vorax targeting systems, designed to track large capital ships, failed catastrophically against the swarm's unpredictable movements. Energy beams that could shatter moons swept harmlessly through empty space as the drones executed evasive patterns no organic pilot could survive. On the Council observation vessel, The alien representatives watched in stunned silence. Their artificial intelligence technology is remarkably sophisticated, Catal observed, yet they maintain control. How is this possible? His colleague, an ancient being who had observed 1,000 species rise and fall, whispered, because humans never trusted machines enough to give them complete autonomy, nor feared them enough to hamper their development. They found balance where others chose extremes. The Prometheus itself accelerated directly toward the Worldbreaker, deploying a strange field that bent energy weapons around its hull. Vorax commanders frantically adjusted targeting parameters as humans executed battle plans that followed no recognizable doctrine. Their tactics make no sense, a Vorax weapons officer protested. They sacrifice optimal firing positions for unpredictable movement patterns. Supreme Commander Drezak studied the battle with growing unease. The human vessel was outnumbered and outgunned, yet it attacked as though victory was assured. Either these humans were tactically insane, or they knew something the Vorax did not. Within the swarm control center aboard the Prometheus, hundreds of human operators guided their drones through neural interfaces, their minds partially merged with the machines. Unlike fully autonomous systems that other species employed, this hybrid approach combined human creativity with machine precision. Target their primary weapon capacitors, Admiral Yamamoto ordered. Swarm units echo pattern Delta 6. The cloud of drones morphed into attack formations that constantly shifted and evolved, adapting in real time as the Vorax adjusted their defenses. Whenever the aliens established an effective counter, the human operators would introduce deliberate chaos, breaking patterns their enemies had just begun to recognize. "Sir," the Prometheus tactical officer reported, "Swarm units have identified a structural weakness where the Dreadnought's main cannon connects to its power core. Simulations indicate a coordinated strike could temporarily disable their primary weapon." Yamamoto nodded grimly. "Execute attack plan Valkyrie. And signal Captain Rice. We need her ships to create a diversion." The Prometheus shuddered as the Worldbreaker's secondary batteries found their mark. Emergency systems wailed, and damage control teams raced through smoke-filled corridors. "Direct hit on decks 7 through 12, the tactical officer reported. "Swarm control center sustaining heavy damage. Shields at 43%. Admiral Yamamoto gripped his command chair as another impact rocked the ship. The tactical display flickered, showing the coordinated attack by the 5 human warships that had created just enough of a diversion for the swarm units to damage the Dreadnought's main cannon. A temporary victory, but the Vorax were adapting quickly. "Reroute emergency power to swarm control," Yamamoto ordered. "We need to maintain neural connections." The ship lurched violently as the Worldbreaker's main weapon, partially repaired, fired a concentrated beam of energy that tore through the Prometheus's forward section. The bridge viewport cracked, emergency force fields snapping into place as atmosphere vented into space. A support beam collapsed, impaling Yamamoto through the chest and pinning him to his command chair. "Admiral." The executive officer rushed to his side as medical personnel swarmed the bridge. Yamamoto coughed blood, the shard of metal protruding grotesquely from his torso. "Status report," he demanded, ignoring his obvious mortal wound. "Sir, Swarm Control Center is offline. We've lost neural connections to 60% of the units." The communications officer interrupted. "Incoming transmission from the Vorax Dreadnought." Supreme Commander Drazak's reptilian face filled the damaged view screen, his expression one of smug superiority. "Your fleet leader has fallen. Surrender now, and your deaths will be painless." But the human response defied all Vorax military doctrine. Instead of confusion or defeat, the human fleet seamlessly reorganized. Captain Rice immediately took strategic command, while the surviving ships executed pre-planned contingency maneuvers without hesitation. Aboard the Thunderchild, Lieutenant Commander Jackson, a 29-year-old tactical officer, burst onto the bridge. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Dreadnought's engine emissions. There's a pattern we can exploit." Rice turned from coordinating the fleet. Explain. The big bastard's recycling its drive plasma too quickly after firing the main gun, Jackson outlined, bringing up detailed scans on the tactical display. There's a 3-second window where the magnetic containment field weakens near the exhaust ports. If we can deliver a payload directly into that vulnerability. Ray studied the analysis, then made an instant decision that would have been impossible in the rigid Vorax command structure. Lieutenant Commander, you now have operational command of Strike Team Alpha. Take our captured Vorax shuttle and a volunteer crew. I'm authorizing use of the prototype quantum warheads. Captain. Commander Oliveira objected. Those warheads are untested, and Jackson is just a tactical officer, not a strike team leader. He identified the weakness. He gets to exploit it. Rise responded flatly. That's how humanity fights. Meanwhile, engineers on the damaged Prometheus performed what the Vorax considered technological heresy, manually overriding safety protocols and rerouting power through life support systems to maintain weapons functionality. Crew members donned emergency breathing apparatus as oxygen was diverted to critical systems. We'll suffocate in 4 hours at this rate, the chief engineer reported to the wounded admiral. We only need 2, Yamamoto replied through gritted teeth, refusing pain medication to keep his mind clear. The council representatives watching the battle finally grasped what made humans different. Faced with certain defeat, other species either surrendered or fought to the last following established protocols. Humans, however, reinvented themselves in the crucible of battle, finding solutions no peacetime engineer would ever contemplate. As Jackson's team boarded the captured shuttle, Kittal turned to his fellow council observer. They're not just fighting. They're evolving during the battle itself. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's team flew the captured Vorax shuttle toward the dreadnought, its identifications code still valid. The 6-person infiltration squad wore salvaged alien armor, their movements just different enough to create unease among any observant Vorax crew members. Remember, don't try to imitate them perfectly. Jackson briefed his team as they approached the massive vessel. That's the surest way to get caught. Move with purpose, like you belong, but don't worry about mimicking their exact posture. The docking controller's suspicious questions were cut short by an incoming transmission from Captain Reyes. All 5 remaining human warships had suddenly broken formation and were accelerating toward the Vorax fleet from different vectors, drawing attention away from the shuttle. Boarding team, you have your window. Reyes' voice came through their secure channel. Make it count. Once aboard, Jackson split his team. Ensign Rodriguez and Lieutenant Park would take 3 quantum warheads directly to the engine section, while Jackson led specialists Chen and Nabiki toward the communication hub. Why aren't we all targeting the engines? Chen questioned as they moved through the alien corridors. That was the mission. Because Vorax ships are designed to compartmentalize damage, Jackson explained. We need to disrupt their command structure simultaneously. Trust me. When they reached the communications center, they didn't attempt sabotage immediately. Instead, Jackson connected a small device to the Vorax network and began broadcasting carefully selected footage throughout the vessel. Smaller human ships successfully damaging Vorax destroyers, escape pods fleeing the Worldbreaker, and most devastatingly, Vorax commanders abandoning their posts while subordinates perished. This isn't real footage, Chen realized, watching the manufactured scenes. This is psychological warfare. Jackson nodded. The Vorax hierarchy is absolute. Questioning the superior's judgment is punishable by death. What happens when the lower ranks see their leaders apparently fleeing? The effect was immediate. Throughout the dreadnought, confused Vorax crew members hesitated at critical moments. Command channels flooded with requests for clarification as lower-ranking officers questioned conflicting orders. Supreme Commander Drazak diverted internal security forces to maintain control, even as the human warships approached. Meanwhile, aboard the crippled Prometheus, Captain Reyes coordinated with Admiral Yamamoto from his medical bay. The damaged Prometheus will make a final run, Reyes told the fleet, not to destroy the dreadnought, but to lock onto its hull with magnetic grapples. We need 20 seconds of distraction for Jackson's team to complete their mission. A suicide mission, Commander Oliveira stated flatly. A necessary one, Yamamoto responded through gritted teeth, still conscious despite catastrophic injuries. The Vorax have never fought an enemy willing to sacrifice premier assets for strategic advantage. It's a concept outside their evolutionary understanding. As the Prometheus accelerated toward the Worldbreaker, Supreme Commander Dryzak faced a decision his species' rigid tactical doctrine never prepared him for: defend against the visible external threat, or continue addressing the internal security breach. His momentary hesitation created the opening Jackson needed. Lieutenant Park signaled from engineering. Charges placed. Awaiting your command. Execute, Jackson ordered, even as he continued feeding disinformation through the Vorax network. The strike team raced toward their extraction point as the Prometheus locked onto the dreadnought with massive magnetic grapples, preventing evasive maneuvers. The quantum warheads detonated precisely as calculated, creating cascading failures through the Worldbreaker's propulsion system. Chain reactions spread through the massive vessel's power grid. For the first time in their 10,000-year history of conquest, the surviving Vorax ships broke formation and fled, their commanders unable to process humanity's willingness to sacrifice for victory. Get that shuttle back immediately, Rise ordered as the Worldbreaker began to list, secondary explosions rippling across its hull. And prepare to recover survivors from the Prometheus. The Galactic Council chambers fell silent as newly promoted Admiral Elena Rise entered, her dress uniform unable to hide the burn scars that marked the left side of her face. Behind her walked Lieutenant Commander Jackson, now Captain, and Dr. Maya Patel, whose improvised defense technology had since been refined into standard-issue equipment for all human vessels. The Vorax representatives immediately rose in protest. The humans violated established combat protocols. Their senior diplomat hissed. They used psychological manipulation and sacrificed their own premier vessels. Such tactics are unprecedented and dishonorable. Murmurs filled the chamber until the ancient council arbiter raised a gnarled hand. The chamber quieted instantly. For 10 millennia, the arbiter began, his voice surprisingly strong for his apparent age. We have watched species fall before the Vorax. Today we recognize that perhaps the protocols themselves were flawed. Turning to Reyes, he asked the question that had consumed the council since the Battle of Helios. How did your species, so new to the stars, accomplish what ancient civilizations with far superior technology could not? Reyes activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed scenes from Earth's history. Early humans huddled around fires while predators prowled in darkness. Primitive boats challenging vast and violent oceans. Fragile aircraft ascending despite countless failures. Humanity wasn't born into privilege or power, she explained. Every step of our evolution was a battle against extinction. While the Vorax evolved into perfect predators, humans evolved as perfect survivors. She advanced the display to show the aftermath of the battle. We prevailed not through superior firepower, but through adaptation. Our decentralized command structure meant that when Admiral Yamamoto was critically wounded, our effectiveness actually increased as multiple leaders implemented simultaneous solutions. The Vorax diplomat snorted in derision. Chaos is not strategy. Yet it was your rigid order that proved fatal, Jackson countered. Your officers waited for instructions while ours acted on initiative. Your crews followed protocols while ours improvised solutions. The council arbiter studied the humans with newfound respect. Perhaps there is wisdom in controlled chaos after all. By unanimous vote, with only the Vorax dissenting, the council granted humanity full membership and established the Soul Defense Initiative, where human tactical advisors would begin training other species in adaptive warfare. In the final moments of the session, the arbiter approached Reyes privately. There is something you should know, Admiral. The Vorax will return. Their pride demands it. We'll be ready, Reyes assured him. I believe you will, the ancient being replied. In all my centuries observing developing species, I've never seen one advance so rapidly under pressure. It's almost as though humanity needs adversity to flourish. Meanwhile, deep within Vorax territory, a young commander named Kreltak presented forbidden findings to the Vorax Evolutionary Council. Footage of the human victory, meticulously analyzed. If we continue fighting as we always have, we will lose the next engagement, Kreltak stated, awaiting his execution for such heresy. The humans have shown us our evolutionary weakness, our inability to adapt. Instead of punishment, he received a nod of approval from the eldest. Begin implementing these human tactics. Evolution favors those who adapt. As the commander departed, the eldest studied an image of human children building structures in sand, only to have waves destroy them, before they immediately began building again, differently. Fascinating creatures, the ancient Vorax murmured. Perhaps worthy adversaries after all. Aboard the newly commissioned UES Prometheus II, Admiral Reyes stood before a memorial wall bearing the names of those lost at Helios. Her hand traced Admiral Yamamoto's name. They thought humans would be easy prey, she whispered. They never asked themselves who hunts the hunters.